Our guest today is Christopher Lochhead. Chris is the leading voice in the field of category design and radical differentiation. He co-authored 2 books on the topic called Niche Down and Play Bigger. But, and that is important to you, the listener, he has actually walked the talk with his CMO stints at 3 public companies. Hello, Chris. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Sandro. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure. Maybe we start with what is categorization, category creation, and kind of how you got into it. Like, how did you start thinking about it, to set a little bit of the context for the conversation?
Sure. Well, category creation, aka category design, is a radical point of view. Because most people don't think that you can design a category. As a matter of fact, most people treat the market like they treat the weather. Oh, the forecast today is it's going to be 63 degrees, cloudy in the morning and sunny in the afternoon here in Santa Cruz, California. Well, it turns out that just like products and just like companies, market categories can be designed. And it's a question most people have never thought of. So a simple way to think about it is, why is it that a powerful flat screen TV at a big box store like Costco, you can walk in and buy that for $150, put it on your wall, and it'll talk to satellites in space and bring over 600 to 800 channels of entertainment to your home. And yet, if you want a pair of high-end sunglasses, and that costs $150. You want a pair of high-end sunglasses, that costs $350. You say, well, wait a minute. One of these products is a piece of plastic that keeps UV out of your eyes. And the other is an amazing feat of technology that speaks to satellites in space. Why is one double the price of the other? And if you didn't know any better, you'd go, well, clearly the thing that talks to the satellites is the more expensive thing. And so everything we value, we have been taught to value. Every market category gets designed either on purpose or by accident. And so what category design is about fundamentally is it's a management discipline for designing and dominating a market category of your choosing. Like you said off the top, it's a strategy for radical differentiation. It's a strategy for getting out of a competition game, getting out of a comparison game, and being able to stand on your own as unique and distinctive, and as such, highly valuable.
And how does, is category design something for everyone in your estimation? Like small, big, B2C, B2B, all across the board? Or do you have criteria by which you actually evaluate whether category creation or category design makes sense, kind of creating something wholly new?
Well, I've been doing this for 35 years. And what I can tell you, Sandro, is that most companies are not going to do this. Most companies, most leaders, marketing leaders, entrepreneurs, CEOs think what I just said is bullshit. They believe in a better strategy. We're better than them. They believe in competition. They believe in playing our carbon-ingulator is faster, cheaper, stronger, smaller, bigger, whatever, than their carbon-ingulator. Now, what they don't realize, to get to your question, is we did a set of primary research for my first book. We've done some follow-up research recently in my newsletter. And the data always comes back the same. So for the book, we looked at all venture-backed technology startups founded in the United States from 2000 to 2015. Mm-hmm. And unlike most research that looks at market share, that is to say, what percentage of the spending in a given market category does a company get, we looked at market cap, that is to say, total value created in a market category as measured by the sum value of all of the companies in the category. Mm-hmm. So we amassed that data. And we asked the data set, okay, what percentage goes to the category leader? And it turns out the number one company in any given category earns 76% of the total value created in the space. And if you look at it, it's simple. Just look around. In most categories, we can name one company, maybe two. Mm-hmm. That's because in most categories, one company owns the category. Who's Peloton's number one competitor? No one knows. Right? And so, who's Google's number one competitor? They don't have one. And this happens in technology category after technology category. And the big aha here, Sandro, is that every market category is starting to behave like a technology market category. You can talk about why if you like. So to get back to your question, should every company do category design? No, they shouldn't, because most companies are not led by somebody with the balls, brains, and bucks to do it.
Right.
And so most entrepreneurs, most marketers, most CEOs make an unconscious, unquestioned, unexamined decision when they launch their company or product or service, which is we are going to compete with marketing to demonstrate to the world why our carbon is better, faster, cheaper, stronger, smaller, bigger, whatever. And without knowing it, we're only playing for 24% of the available opportunity. Mm-hmm. And the more we play the comparison game, the more we're fucking ourselves. Here's my current favorite. You ready for my current favorite? Please. Have you ever heard of a company called Wherebee?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This video conferencing.
Yep. Yes. Mm-hmm. They're running an ad campaign right now. That ad campaign says, the New York Times says we have better meetings than Zoom. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, when I run an ad that says, think about Wherebee, not Zoom. Think about Wherebee, not Zoom. Wherebee's better than 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 Zoom. What company are you thinking about?
Zoom. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of
Pepsi's
the Pepsi, Coke. Yeah, exactly.
She's the dumbest fucking marketing company in history. Okay, the PR people of the woman who ran Pepsi as a CEO for years pitched her to come on my podcast. I took a pass. Yeah. Because all I'm going to do is tell her how stupid she is, and she doesn't want to hear me tell her that. So it's not going to be a great podcast. And so, the amount of marketing people who believe this is a good strategy is stunning. I was in a social media debate about Wherebee recently, and I said, look, they might as well Venmo their entire marketing budget to Zoom, because all they're doing is telling the world that Zoom's the category king. Mm-hmm. And they will get fucked up. And they will either go out of business or they'll get acquired by some kind of a LBO firm. And that LBO firm will fire everybody in the company and milk it for revenue or milk it for maintenance revenue until it dies. That's what's going to happen to Wherebee. They have no future. Right. And yet they're running ads that say we're better than Zoom. And so this is going to happen over and over and over again. Entrepreneurs and marketers have been recruited into the cult of the brand, and they don't know that they're in a cult that will kill them. And so the answer is no. Most companies won't do it. Most companies shouldn't, because they're in a cult and they want to stick to their religion. And the reality is the companies that don't embark on category design make a decision, whether they realize it or not, to fight for 24% of the marbles.
Interesting. And so if let's say most people who will listen here are marketing leaders or aspiring marketing leaders at mostly B2B companies. And let's say I've been kind of buying into the cult for a while. I'm trying to kind of measure myself against the competitors inside our niche or our industry. What is different between the approach to kind of differentiate ourselves as opposed to kind of create something completely new? Like, where do I start, and how is the process different of arriving at a category versus like just merely differentiating ourselves from another brand that we maybe probably aspire to, like you mentioned, right?
Well, the difference is, what's the reference point?
Mm-hmm.
See, when we do what over 90% of marketers and entrepreneurs do, we're playing a comparison game. That's the game we're playing. When we're branding, when we're positioning, we're branding and positioning in a context of something. You can't brand yourself in the context of nothing. Everything sits in a context. And so the question is, what's the context? And marketers have been recruited into a brand cult. And so what they've been taught is, oh, the best brand wins. So we need to have the best brand. And they spend tons of money marketing the brand. Okay, well, the best brand wins what? In what context are you winning? Well, that context is called a market category. Because if you're going to win something, you're going to win the market, right? That's what you're doing. Okay. So a couple of big points. Number one, when we're competing, who's the reference point?
Mm-hmm.
The competition. Legends don't do that. They force a choice. They want all others to be compared to them. They want the world to view them as a demarcation point. When Steve Jobs launches the iPod, he ignores the existence of the existing category and the existing players in the category, and he actually renames the category. So at the time, and this is a classic example of a category named by engineers, the best product wins crew. At the time, the category is called an MP3 player. Now, most consumers don't know what the fuck an MP3 is. It's the file name. So only a bunch of dorks would name a market category after a file name, but they did. Well, and it was a dorky name that most people didn't understand, and the products weren't that great. So the category didn't go anywhere. Jobs comes along, and he doesn't call it an MP3 player, when in point of fact, it plays MP3s.
Right.
He reframes the category and gives it a new name. Frame it, name it, and claim it. That's what category designers do. So he says it's a digital music player. Those are the three words he puts together to create the new category. Read the press release. He says iPod creates a new category of digital music player. Now, it's a breakthrough product for sure. And he does not leave his breakthrough product in a piece of shit, stupid category. He designs a new category to differentiate his product and himself from what came before. He's not driving a comparison with MP3 players. He's saying there's the old MP3 player and there's a new digital music player, and you have a choice. And he backs his marketing up by evangelizing the category, which positions the product as the category king with one sentence. And that sentence is 1,000 songs in your pocket. And so he shifts the entire category design from being a nose-picky technical one, named after a file that is meaningless to the average consumer. He puts together three words that at the time we don't really know what that means, but you can begin to imagine what that might mean: digital music player.
Right.
And the ads say 1,000 songs in your pocket. And in the press release, he positions it as, how do you take your record collection with you anywhere you go? That's the problem they're solving with the digital music player that provides 1,000 songs in your pocket, you can have your record collection with you anywhere you go. And of course, the rest is history. And so the question for all entrepreneurs, for all marketers is, how do I be the person who invents the game as opposed to plays the game designed by somebody else? Because the minute I accept the existing rules, MP3 player, I'm playing their game. The minute I say, hey, fuck that, new game.
Right.
And what that gets to from a marketing perspective, Sandro, is the difference between capturing demand and creating demand. And most marketers will spend their entire careers trying to capture demand created by somebody else, not realizing that that's what losers do. See, it's one thing to capture demand. It's a whole other thing to create it.
And I mean, so when you say kind of creating demand, and I'm just picturing like in my own career, like I go to my CEO and I'm like, I want to create my own category, and it's not about like, taking the context of our current industry, but I want to create something completely new. Like what are your arguments when your boss says, no, that's not gonna happen? Or like, because I would say probably like most executives will probably say like, yeah, that's too risky, right? That's too, like, we're in a pretty comfortable position. Like, that's too risky. Like, what do you say? I will also maybe with clients that you work with.
I would say, hey, thanks for hanging out and have a nice life. I'm out of here. Here's what most people don't understand. If you're a marketer and you're working for a CEO who's not a category designer, you are wasting your life. You're wasting your life. Most of us spend more time working than doing any other thing in our adult life. Mm-hmm. So it's a disproportionate amount of our time. The investment of our life is disproportionately weighted to work. That's point A. Point B, we roughly all get about 8 trips to the plate. That is to say, if you say the average career starts at, let's call it 25 and ends at 65. And to make the math simple, because grade 3 math was the hardest 12 years of my life, let's say the average person stays in a job 5 years. Probably a little less than that now, but let's just keep it 5, right? So if my math is right, 25 to 65 is 8 jobs. And if you want to shorten it a little, maybe it's 10 jobs. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's 12 jobs if you move around a lot. But it might not even be double digits. And even if it is, it's not high double digits. Okay. But if you go with my original math, it's 8 trips to the plate. All right. So what do you want to do with your 8 trips? Do you want to work at a company that's fighting for 24% of the value with a strategy called we're better than them? If that's what you want to do, then have at it. That has a name. It's called incrementalism, and it's called losing. That's what that's called. So if you want to go do that, go do that. It's a horrible thing to say, but if you work at Xerox, you're irrelevant because Xerox is irrelevant. I'm sure they're a nice company. I'm sure there's lots of nice people there. Nobody gives a fuck. Why? The only companies that matter are companies that are designing and dominating market categories. When you say, oh, I work at Microsoft, people go, oh, fuck, yeah, Microsoft. Right. They understand what that is, right? And so if you want to be somebody who does exponential things in their career, you have to work at a company that's trying to do some fucking exponential shit, right? Mm-hmm. A company that is breaking and taking new ground, a company that is moving the world from the way it is to a whole new and different way. If that's what you want to do with your career, and I understand most people don't want to do that with their career, and that's fine. But if you want to do exponential shit, if you want to move the world meaningfully forward, then you have to be at a company that has the courage to do legendary shit. And the most legendary thing a company can do is design its own category, which it then goes on to dominate. And so my point is, if you want to do legendary exponential shit in your career and you want to make what is probably 70% of your waking hours for your adult life meaningful in some fucking way, other than just taking home a paycheck, other than just working with nice people, which is fine if you want to do that, then you got to go do something exponential, and you only get 8 shots at it, maybe 10.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, so if I think back, like my first kind of venture right out of university was, I guess, kind of a category creation. I mean, we tried, it's definitely a riskier position to take. But when I think back, like it was a hell lot of fun and we definitely garnered attention. So what we did at the time was we created a machine that works a little bit like a Keurig or an espresso machine. But instead of ground coffee in the pots, there was like fresh dough in the pots. And so we could make flatbread in a minute, right? At the touch of a button. And so whenever we were at like these homeware or like kitchenware trade shows, like we were the stars. Like people were like, what is this? What is happening here, right? And it was a difficult thing in the end in terms of unit economics and actually taking it off the ground. It was very, very complex. But if I think back of just the drive that we had and that was kind of behind the project was very different than how you also described, like, working in an incremental business. I never thought about it that way. That's really interesting.
Well, and you're on a very important point about mission. My partner in Category Pirates, our newsletter, Buddy Yoon, is one of the smartest men I've ever met. And one of the things that he makes a distinction between in business is the distinction between missionaries and mercenaries.
Mm-hmm.
And what I would tell you is the most effective mercenaries in the world, God cannot even help them when they encounter deeply committed missionaries.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're willing to crawl through flaming glass to change something, there's no amount of mercenary pay that's going to get that competition, to get that other person to be on the mission that you're on. I know.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I can actually identify with that. Like it was just a whole different energy, just from everyone involved. And so.
The other thing, Sandra, if I could loop back, you said that it's more risky creating a category.
Yeah, I just wanted to actually follow up on that because.
Okay, so like, what were you going to say about that?
No, so I mean, basically, if you have 8 bets, right? If you say you have 8 bets, like I can sign onto the mission if I'm not all too risk averse, like right, I want to be part of like, let's say 6 out of those 8, ideally 8 out of 8 should be a product or a service that is completely in its own category. But from the outside, to me, it's like, especially having done one of those, it's for 4 years. It was from the outset like a riskier endeavor, even though it felt downhill while we were doing it. But it was a riskier endeavor because you can play safe and just kind of create a smaller company and then have like your comfortable life, right?
Well, you can. I mean, small businesses create their own categories all the time. We talk about some examples if you want. There's
please.
A recent example I learned about that is my favorite small company example of the moment, which I can tell you about. But I want to push on this risky thing because I know it feels that way. I've spent my whole professional life in standing at the beginning of what we lovingly refer to today as $0 billion categories. And when you say, hey, listen, here's what we want to do. We want to raise $100 million of venture capital from top tier VCs in Silicon Valley. And we want to build a product and a company and a category that there's no sort of corollary to today and there's no demand for. Versus, hey, we're going to build a new carbidingulator. It's the demand for it is, $1 billion, and right. Gartner Group or IDC tells us it's going to $5 billion in the next 20 seconds. And so we're going to enter this hot growth market. That's what people say, right? What I would posit to you, Sandro, is that doing that is literally the most risky thing you can do in business. It's way more risky than designing your own category. So what's more risky? We're going to take a whole bunch of money, a whole bunch of time and effort, and we're going to attack a market category being designed by somebody else. That other person, that other company is creating massive demand. We know that statistically, data science tells us that other company is going to take a 76% of the value created in the space. And so we are convincing ourselves that fighting over 24% is the less risky strategy. That's what we've told ourselves. When in point of fact, we're going to be one of several fighting over that 24%. Mm-hmm. Can I share a story with you about this?
Yes, please.
A couple of weeks ago, I got a call from a CEO who's getting ready to go public. Top tier venture backed company. Wanted to get some advice because it turns out that an IPO is actually a category forming event. Talk about that if you like. So I'm on the phone with this CEO founder and his executive team, and he literally says to me, here's what we want to do. There's this company, let's just call the company X. In the B2B tech space, by the way, I'll have you know, that went public fairly recently and has a $10+ billion market cap. Okay. And company X is the acknowledged category leader in this category. That's what all the Wall Street reports say. And that's why they have a $10 billion plus market cap. This CEO is the CEO of company Y. And he says, look, we're going public. We're rushing to get out because company X just showed the world why this category matters. And if they have a $10 billion valuation, we think we can easily get an 8 because even though we're smaller than them, our technology is way better than theirs. When we do a head-to-head on them, we always win. We win 8 out of 10 times in head-to-heads. And so let's get ourselves public so that we can take over this category from company X. And we want your help in doing that. That's what they say to me. And I said to the CEO, let's just call him Jimmy, I'm not going to help you do that at all. Matter of fact, this is probably the last time we talk. And because it's probably the last time we talk, I want to share some things with you. What you're about to do is called suicide. It has a name. And you're going to remember this call for the rest of your career. Because here's what's going to happen to you, Jimmy. You do exactly what you said you're going to do. You're going to go public. You're not going to have an $8 billion market cap. You're going to have a $1 billion market cap. He says, what do you mean? I said, well, listen, savvy investors on Wall Street know that one company, the category queen, takes 2/3 of the economics. They know this. So when you go public and your S1 and your IPO roadshow is essentially what they said, you can do it all with one slide. What they said. You put up their logo and say what they said. Okay. Yeah. So savvy investors know that the category king earns 2/3 of the economics. So the minute you file your S1, all of the investors of company X are going to look at it and go, you dumb fucks. We're not buying that shit. And so you're going to get the dumb fuck investors, not the smart investors. Okay. You're going to get a much lower market cap. And, you say that you win 7 or 8 out of 10 times you come up against them, right? Do you track the deals that they win that you didn't compete on?
Probably not.
The blood ran out of his face. The blood ran out of his face. And then I said, Jimmy, here's what's going to happen. In your first 4 to 6 quarters as a public company, you will miss your numbers. I can guarantee it. You will remember this call. You will remember my voice. You'll hit your numbers, and your shitty market cap in comparison to theirs will get cut in half. You'll take down your guidance. And after that happens, you'll miss 2 out of the 4 next quarters, even after you've lowered your guidance. And the entire world will know that Company X is beating the shit out of you. Their market cap will go up. They'll continue to beat earnings. And then you're going to get an email or a phone call from a piece of shit tier 3 leverage buyout private equity firm. And they're going to buy you for a not very interesting amount of money. They're going to fire all of your people, except for a few people in support. And then they're going to have a high margin maintenance business until the customers figure out what's going on and say, fuck it, and go to Company X. That's what's going to happen. I've been doing this for 35 fucking years. You will never forget this conversation. He told me essentially to go fuck myself. I said, okay, well, you fuck you too. See you. Mm-hmm. The next day, he calls my friends, Kevin Maney and Mike Damphouse at Category Design Advisors. Kevin Maney co-wrote Play Bigger, our first book. And he says, talked to Lochhead yesterday, and he told me what's up, and I think he's right. Can I work with you guys? And they hired him. And guess what? They're going public with a whole different category design. They're not mentioning Company X at all. Mm-hmm. And so that's the reality of the situation. He did the stunning thing, which is did a 180. We'll see if he executes. I'm not sure he still really believes it, but I clearly scared the shit out of him enough that he decided to try something different with his IPO. So we'll see if he has the balls to stick to it. Probably not. Most people don't. But you understand the point of the story. Mm-hmm. And yet, that guy did the unusual thing. Most people continue forward.
Right. And so how does that look like for a smaller company? I mean, I guess most 99% of the companies are not category creators, like by obviously. And so like I guess the smaller that you are, like the earlier that you start, the better, like probably right out of the gate, like we did in our case. What smaller examples do you have of companies that are doing just as you say, basically, and defining a whole new category?
Here's my current new favorite. Mm-hmm. So I get a LinkedIn email. Let me see if I can find the guy's name while we're talking. A couple weeks ago. Let's see how good. Yes. Found it. The guy's name is Matthew Campbell. So I get this email out of the blue, and he says to me, while I have your ear, thanks for preaching being a category king. You have changed my mindset, and now I am considered one. So I said to him, wow, that's amazing. What changed in your mindset, and what change in outcome did you create? Matthew responds with, I changed from being a broadline wedding planning website to being category king of wedding song suggestions. When the change was made in January 2017, we saw a hockey stick effect in growth. Instead of trying to be everything to everybody, now we just focus on that one thing and try to be great at it. It is also easier to promote something that is so specific now that we are seen as a leader. So here's what happens. Matthew has a website that's a wedding planning, what he calls, quote, broadline wedding planning website. I don't know what that website was. Mm-hmm. He starts consuming this information about category design. He starts asking yourself, how do we be more radically different? Is it possible? And he has this insight, and the insight goes like this. One of the most important things at every wedding is the music.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody's focused on this. Just imagine a wedding with no music. Regardless of your faith, like when you come into the place of worship, the church, whatever it is, there's probably music playing. When we go to the reception, there's music playing. When the bride and groom walk down the aisle together as a new couple, wedding, music playing. There's music everywhere. And if you start to think about it, you go, hey, shit, maybe Matthew's right. Like, there's no such thing as a wedding with no music. So he launches a website called myweddingsongs.com. You can go look at it. It's genius. He's the category king of wedding music. And you pay whatever service charge or whatever, and he helps you pick the music for your wedding. And as per his note on LinkedIn, he's seen a hockey stick. Why? He went from being an undifferentiated wedding planning website to being the first and only wedding song website. And it changed his life and his business. And so if Matthew can do it in the wedding planning business, anybody can. You don't have to be Google or Facebook or Oracle or whoever. You don't have to go to Sand Hill Road and raise $1 zillion in venture capital to go create a category. You can be like Matthew and launch myweddingsongs.com.
So, I mean, let's say that's interesting, right? I mean, so let's say that Matthew comes to you and basically just with the proposition like, hey, he read your material, or like he read about category design, and he wants you to help him, but he hasn't figured this out himself. Like, what is the process you take people through?
So that's, what my first book is a lot about. And what we tried to do was, having done this over 50 times and having watched a lot of other companies do it, whether they did it intuitively or whether they did it explicitly, many of the most legendary marketers and creators of all time have been category designers. So it was sort of a combination of analysis of what are other people doing and what process had we developed over 35 years. And it essentially starts with, what's the insight? What's the problem that we're focused on? Why are we doing what we're doing? What's the aha? So you work back from the aha, the insight, and that insight, the more radically different it is, the more people disagree with it, the more interesting we think it is. The more if 7 out of 10 people think your idea is dumb, you might be onto something.
That was the case for us. So big. Right.
Because if 7 out of 10 people go, oh, that's awesome, you're like, well, it's probably not exponential enough.
Right.
So what's the insight? What's the radical differentiation? And it can be just a small.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it can be small. Wedding songs. And the minute I say you can't imagine a wedding without music, all of a sudden we're now thinking about wedding music differently.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the insight? What's the problem? What's the opportunity? And then we market the problem. We market the insight. We market the opportunity, not the product. I said to you, what's a wedding without music? I didn't start with myweddingsong.com as an awesome website that has a great search engine for finding music.
Right.
I started by sharing with you the problem, the opportunity, the insight that Matthew had. So the first thing is, what's the problem? What's the insight? What's the aha? Then languaging matters.
Mm-hmm.
Category designers are masters at languaging. Everybody looks to Mark Benioff in the B2B space, who is arguably the most masterful category designer of the last 20-something years. And he's the category designer of the cloud. It's obvious. No Mark, no cloud. What most people don't understand is that he framed the problem and he named the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And he made the problem big, urgent, and expensive. Because the more urgent, big, and expensive a problem is, the more time, money, and energy people will spend solving the problem. And he named it. He called it on-premise software. Now, what most people do is they attack their competition. They say, Coke tastes like shit, Pepsi tastes better. Benioff didn't say SAP is a piece of shit.
Right.
He said there's a giant problem with on-premise software. SAP was not calling their software on-premise software. It's a functionally correct characterization of SAP, of Siebel, of the old client-server technologies, okay? And then he imbues his functionally correct new description of the old world on-premise. He imbues that phrase with negative meaning. He turns on-premise into a cigarette. He turns on-premise into genital cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If your doctor comes to you, Sandra, and says, hey, you got dick cancer, you are very focused right now on solving this problem.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so that's what category designers do. And so the genius is they develop what's called a point of view that helps educate the market and moves people from the way it is to the way the category designer wants it to be. And it starts with naming and framing the problem. On-premise software equals a cigarette. And he has a point of view about that. And that point of view gets summarized with the word software and a red circle and a line through it. No software. And he preaches no software for over 20 years. And all he does is say no software, no software, no software. In every interview, all he does is say, the problem with on-premise, really, there's so many problems. Let's talk about the cost. Let's talk about how hard it is to upgrade. Let's talk about the fact that you have to buy new servers all the time. Let's talk about what it means to run your own data center. Why do you have to have a data center for CRM? It's crazy. And he goes on and on and on for 20 years. All he does is evangelize the problem. Now, here's what I know. In 1998, I believe Benioff started in 99. If you had done a survey of chief information officers of publicly traded Fortune 500 companies and said, how many of you would like to rent software and not buy it? How many of you will put that software in somebody else's data center, rely on somebody else's security? And in that data, you will have who all your customers are, what all those customers have bought from you, what your sales forecast is, who all your salespeople are, what all your products are, what all your territories are, what all your commissions are. Just put all that shit in our data center, and you don't own it, but you can have it anytime you want it. Well, here's what I'm going to tell you. In 1997, 1998, 10 out of 10 CIOs said, fuck no.
Right.
And so category designers move the world from the way it is to the way they want it to be. One of our favorite expressions around here is everything is the way that it is because somebody changed the way that it was.
That's nice. Like, it's actually, I sympathize with that because at the time when we did the Keurig for flatbread thing, we actually sat down with the creator of the Nespresso, who basically created these kind of pod systems for coffee. And he said, like, it took him 20 years and he started in B2B, slow, and then moved into B2C. But it took him 20 years of convincing Nestle, the big national corporation, to actually really take him serious. And so that was also the moment that we then said, okay, like, I guess we first go B2B in our case. And there, people got it earlier. We had like an easier business case, which helped us in our case. But he was saying like it took a lot of tenacity on his side to just really hammer it home, like you say, right? 20 years of no software. And it's this painting, like I almost feel like it's kind of painting the villain that you're fighting against, right? Yeah.
It's Joseph Campbell. Mm-hmm. Everything's a hero's journey. The question is, who are the bad guys and who's the hero and why do we care? But everything's the same story.
That's really interesting. So when we shift gears towards personal branding, like what is your, I think I read somewhere while doing some research for this conversation that you had a pretty strong point on personal branding where like, I think something along the lines of like legends don't brand themselves or something like that. Like what is the whole, how can you connect personal branding with category design on like an individual level? Is that something that you think about even for yourself as well? Like how do you connect the two?
So the first thing I'd say, Sandro, is one of our other favorite expressions around here is thinking about thinking is the most important kind of thinking. Mm-hmm. Having said that, what most people call thinking is not thinking. What most people call thinking is the replaying of somebody else's thoughts in my head. And I take, I like that. I don't like that perspective. So you say something, I go, I like that. Well, that sounded really good. And I replay what you said in my head, and I replay it enough times that I think it because I agreed with it when you said it. That's not fucking thinking. That's called replaying somebody else's thoughts with very little, if any, consideration other than your feeling in the moment. And I replay that enough times that I start to feel really good about it. And before you know it, I believe something political, or in this case,
right,
I believe something I read on LinkedIn, which says, personal branding is the most important thing for your career today. Yeah, that sounds really smart. If there are more people who knew about me, and that would be good. Yeah, excellent. Personal branding. Okay. So fuck that. There's 1,000 reasons. And by the way, that's just one of them. We can talk about a lot of other ones. You want to talk about minimum viable product? We'll talk about how stupid that is too. One of the most dumb, stupid, ignorant ideas to show up in business in the last 15 years. Just put minimum viable in front of any other word. See how it works. Tell your spouse, hey, I'd like to have a minimum viable marriage. Let's work on some minimum viable children. Your boss gives you an assignment. So, I'm going to do a minimum viable job on this. Yeah, fuck. You're going to go into a sales call. You say to the sales manager, I'm going to do a minimum viable job on this sales pitch. You're fired. Dumbest fucking thing. So there's a lot of these stupidities that are out there. MVP is so crazy. Anyway, so personal branding. Number one, people are people. They're not fucking brands. People are people. Point A. Brands are things. They're not people. The second one is what you want is a reputation. That's what you want. Now, the purveyors of personal branding, what personal branding has become is a bunch of bullshit being sold to you, typically by a hustle porn star. And that hustle porn star monetizes envy. And so that hustle porn star says, oh, you need to get out there, man. You need to get out there. You need to puke 1,000 pieces of shit on the internet a day, right? 100 minimum, right? And you need to figure out what your personal brand is. And you know what these assholes often say next? And the key to personal branding is authenticity. Well, what the fuck are we doing with personal branding? What we're doing is we're making up an image.
Right.
That's what we're doing. And we're saying, what image, as though we were fucking Lady Gaga or something, what image do we want the world to have of us? Because that's our personal brand. Well, I want them to think I'm sexy and I want them to think I'm smart and successful. Hey, maybe we could rent some Lamborghinis and some planes that I could pose in front of and make myself look really fucking awesome and shit. And maybe I could be like Tom Vu, the original hustle porn star, and we could get a bunch of gals in bikinis next to my rented Lambo. So these assholes who talk about authenticity in your personal brand, just it's so insane.
It's funny. Yeah, it's funny.
But people buy the show. I bought how to build an authentic personal brand workshop. I bought it. It was only $1,200. You know. Okay, so all of that's bullshit. Here's what you want. You want a reputation. And you know what a reputation comes from? A reputation comes from producing legendary results over time. Go do that. And the degree to which you want to become known for a category that you own, I understand that. That's called marketing yourself. Okay? So what you want is a personal category design. What are you known for? That for is your category. Categories make brands, not the other way around. Categories make brands, not the other way around. If you're coming to visit me today in Santa Cruz, we're going to go out to dinner. And I say, hey, Sandra, I want to take you to one of our favorite newer restaurants here in Santa Cruz. It's called Alderwood. What's a likely question you might ask?
Well, what kind of food do they serve?
Yes. Category, brand. I gave you brand because you didn't have any context for brand. I said Alderwood. You don't know what that is. You need to know what that is. Mm-hmm. You said what category? The answer to that would be steakhouse. Oh, shit. I had steak last night. I was kind of feeling sushi. Oh, okay. Well, then there's this great sushi place. Category, not brand. That's how the brain works. So what do you want to be known for? Oh, mm-hmm. I'm the world's leading authority in wedding songs. Mm-hmm. Then you give a shit who Matthew Campbell is.
Right.
But if he just screams, Matthew Campbell, Matthew Campbell, Matthew Campbell, you're like, why are you yelling your name at me? That's what fucking personal branding is. And look, I'll just tell you, and I made this mistake because I didn't know shit about being in this social world. I didn't grow up in this fucking world, right? I spent 30 years fucking doing shit, right? I became an author, podcaster guy 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I, like everybody else, got a bunch of dumb advice. And unfortunately, I'm embarrassed to admit, I took some of it. So when you're putting a fucking photo of yourself on social media with a quote of yourself, you're a moron. You're an asshole. That makes you an idiot. I've done it. Made me an idiot. I stopped doing it. Makes you a donkey. Okay. Eric Yuan is my entrepreneur of the year for 2020. I think rather than blaming him for quote unquote Zoom fatigue, we should give him the presidential honor of freedom. Okay. He had the greatest year any entrepreneur could possibly have last year. He scaled his company like nobody's ever scaled. He made $1 bazillion. And most importantly, ask yourself the question, where would we be without Zoom? Okay. Right. I would argue to you in 2020, Zoom became an essential service. The people who developed the vaccine used Zoom. Our education system would have stopped. I mean, and on and on. And here's what I know about Eric last year. He spent zero fucking time, zero, and I mean zero, putting memes with his own face on them. He spent zero time thinking about his personal brand. Zero. It's a stupidity. Do legendary work, share legendary shit with the world, and become known for a personal category that you own as a result of achieving shit, mm-hmm. learning shit, sharing shit, being a legendary collaborator, a legendary value creator, a legendary result producer. And you do that for 25 years and you will become known for a category that you own and you'll be the shit. Or you can pay $1,200 for an asshole course to figure out what your authentic scam is and put up some bullshit imagination of yourself that you wish you were, that we all know is bullshit. You could do that. But other than that, I think personal branding is awesome.
Boom. That was a great answer. And I think also a great way to actually wrap up the conversation. Thanks for that little rant. I think it's funny, right? I mean, you talk about personal branding in the same breath as like authenticity. So you're kind of creating a persona and talk about authenticity in the same sentence. It's kind of interesting, which also makes me think, though, how important it is to really heavily filter what kind of people you're letting into your ears. And, so because you're just unconsciously picking up this stuff, right? So.
Yeah, and people regurgitate it like it's the truth.
Yeah. So true.
There's so much, these hustle porn stars have done more damage to entrepreneurs in the last decade than any other single group. There's so much stupidity in it. It's unbelievable. Grant Cardone quotes himself, because he likes to do that, as saying, well, nobody ever died of hard work. Oh, really? In Japan, they have a word for it, you dumb fuck.
Right.
Right? What did we just have happen, Sandro? What did we just have happen? We had Mackenzie Scott and Jeff Bezos get divorced. And we now have Melinda and Bill Gates getting divorced. Here's what nobody's talked about with this. These are two of, if not the two, richest couples in fucking history, in human history. I don't know these people. I know people who know these people. They seem like nice people. The people that I know who know these people, who've worked for these people, I know people who've worked directly for these people. They say they're very good people. They seem like they're good people. Do I think Bill and Melinda have spent the last decade trying to save the world? I think they probably have. Do I think in 2020, Amazon showed itself as a critical essential service akin to fucking electricity in the United States of America? Yeah, I did, because where the fuck would we be without Amazon? And do I think that Jeff and the team there should be I absolutely do. And think about this. The richest couples in the world, they literally have everything and anything. Like, there's nothing they can't do. And both marriages broke up.
Right.
And so what none of these hustle porn stars will say is, they say it's about the money. Go make the money. You're not supposed to take your 20s off and just work. Right? All this insanity. Yeah? What about your marriage? Your marriage. The person, the decision to get married and the ongoing decision to stay married, I would argue to you, is pretty much the most consequential decision we make. Because if it works, it's incredible. And if it doesn't work, it's fucking incredible, but in the wrong way. It'll destroy your life if it doesn't work. And two of the richest couples in the world, with all the money in the world, could not save their marriages. And so what is our work in service of, Sandro? What are we building our company and our career for? Are we living to work? Or are we working to live? Is it okay with you to have a legendary career and at age 65 be overweight, out of shape, and divorced? Living in a cocoon? The guy can't even go to the grocery store. Okay, you think he's free? You think life's going to be easy now for him? Or her, for that matter? So look, we have to think about our work in a context, and that context is called our life. And so it's very important that we ask questions about why am I doing what I'm doing? And one of the great things about the pandemic is it's thrown virtually the entire planet into a set of existential questions. We just recently wrote a newsletter on this thing called the YOLO economy. YOLO standing for You Only Live Once. Was a term originally created by the drummer of the Grateful Dead and then hip hop.
Oh, was it?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, Mickey. Why am I blanking on his last name? He's the first known use of it, and then of course Drake made it super popular most recently. And so we wrote a letter about how people are really designing their careers as a result of the pandemic. And we dug into some research center, and we found that 50% of people are considering a job change in 2021. Right. And so the meaning and the purpose of our work beyond a paycheck's way important. But if we're a slave to a paycheck, then we got to ask ourselves some questions. And even the guys with the biggest paychecks in the history of the world couldn't save their marriages. And so what's your life worth to you, and what's your career worth to you, and how are you going to do life design and put your career and your work in the context of your life, not the other way around. This is another example of why listening to these porn stars has been so damaging to so many.
Definitely. And this is, I think, to wrap up, like one thing that stuck with me is also really like being aware of, are you thinking for yourself or are you regurgitating what other people say? Because I honestly think, and I am guilty of this myself, like I have to check myself more often. Is this my thinking, or was it someone else's that I picked up and just repeated, too many times? And now I'm like, okay, that's actually is it my truth or is it someone else's? Yeah.
Well, I think we've lost the ability to do this as a culture, right? You say, okay, pick a topic, pick any topic. Climate change, go. Immigration, go. In the United States, gun control, go.
Right.
What happens after the word go is the spewing of shit that other people have said before that we liked. And for the most part, most of us didn't really think about it.
And that goes probably with pretty much every part of our life, right?
Well, and this, frankly, it circles back to category design. Most marketers make an unknown, unexamined, unquestioned, unthought about decision to adopt a strategy called, we're going to compete for existing market share, aka demand, with a we're better, faster, cheaper than them strategy. That's when you say marketing, that's the context people plug in.
Yeah.
They don't even consider that you're not doing that. All you got to do is turn the TV on and watch any car ad for a local car dealership. Come on down, we got red ones and blue ones, and we will not be undersold. We got the best prices, and they're just barking features and stupidities because they're in an undifferentiated business that, from a revenue and a margin perspective, is a race to the bottom. That's what you do when you're in a race to the bottom. You bark stupidities. You are the favorites. Don't take our word for it. What? What else should I not take your word on then? You just told me you had the best service, the best selection. Then you told me not to take your word for it. I mean, there's so many stupid fucking things marketers do that they never even, I hear it in enterprise situations. You see it in corporate videos, but don't take our word for it. Q customer or Gartner analyst. Okay, well, what else should I not take your word?
It's so true. And it just makes me also, I was thinking about this a lot, like when I am paying someone for their advice, like the incentives are sometimes there not to tell me the stuff I want to hear too, right? And so like being wary when you pay for advice that there might be another ulterior motive. And for me, kind of the lesson of this podcast is also like, let's start thinking for ourselves, especially also in business, right? We cannot, unfortunately, not go into it, but the MVP is another whole topic. I'm actually starting to see more and more people actually in Silicon Valley saying like, okay, I mean, we've been wrong about like certain things there. So I was just reading something today. So I think people are waking up, but nonetheless, I mean, it doesn't matter if it's MVP or something else. I think in the end, people took it as the truth for a long, long time now. So yeah, thank you very much for this super interesting conversation, and yeah, also kind of challenging the listeners to think a little bit outside of what everybody's telling you. I think that's an important message. Is there something like that you want to end this with before we wrap up?
Yes. We're living in a very important time in history. Never before has the receptivity to the new and different been this high. And over the last year or so, we've experienced a number of Bannister breakthroughs in many areas. Roger Bannister being the man who broke the 4-minute mile, and scientists said the human body was not capable of it. Well, the most interesting thing about Roger Bannister was actually not that he broke the 4-minute mile. It's what happened after he broke the 4-minute mile. A few weeks later, an Australian guy broke it. And less than a year later, two broke it in one race. And of course, women broke it. And now, what used to be impossible is now unremarkable. Those kinds of Bannister breakthroughs are happening everywhere, Sandro. We thought that a drug took 12 to 20 years. It took 9 months. Work from home, not possible. Most companies figured it out in less than a week. Thanks to Eric. Telemedicine, been hearing about it for 20 years. All of a sudden happened. And on and on and on and on. And so there's this stupidity, another thing that we hear in marketing a lot called, it's hard to change people's minds. People don't like change, Sandro. People don't like change. People don't like change. Oh, really? Well, 12 years ago, nobody needed a smartphone. And 12 seconds ago, nobody was drinking flax milk. People love change. People don't like change is one of the dumbest fucking things we hear in business. People love change when they're presented with a point of view on why they should. And so what I would tell you is the future needs you. Those of us who are committed to driving exponential change in business and in other areas of life, the world needs us right now. Everything about the way we live, work, and play is up for grabs. Anything we see wrong about the current paradigm, there's receptivity to making a move there. And so what I would leave people with is the future needs you. If you are a person who is committed to breaking and taking new ground, if you are a person who is committed to moving the world forward on a different, more powerful path, now is your time. Now is the time for the people with the creative minds, the resources, the love of technology and innovation, empathy for our fellow human, to come forward and design the future of our choosing. The future doesn't just fucking happen like the weather. Somebody makes it happen. Everything is the way that it is because somebody changed the way that it was. And so if you're somebody who has the ability to do that or wants to have the ability to do that, now is the time. The future needs you.
I love this call to arms. Let's go get them. Thank you, Chris, for this wonderful conversation. Where should people go to learn more about you and your work?
Lochhead.com. Everything hangs off there.
Perfect. That's simple. Good.
That's
Thank you very much, Chris. Love it. And good fortunes. Bye-bye.
Thank you, brother.